In 1971, a new TV show debuted on CBS starring Rod Taylor, Dennis Cole, and one of America's first true sports cars. The show was called Bearcats. This is a story about one of the main characters in the show, a 1914 Stutz Bearcat. Where it came from, who built it, and where is it now? We found John Boyle. He's a retired major from the United States Air Force. Over the years, John has become quite an expert on the history of the show and particularly the car. We caught up with John in Spokane, Washington, and sat down to have a conversation about the show, its characters, and most importantly, the car.
Hi, here with John Boyle, owner of a 1914 Stutz Bearcat built by Barris Custom Motors. I think he's owned the car for 25 years or so.
Actually 26, early 1999.
All right. So what made you acquire this car, or how'd you come about it?
Well, Bearcats premiered in the fall of 1971. It was created by Douglas Hayes, who was a veteran Hollywood producer, scriptwriter, director. He did all kinds of stuff. And he came up with a show of an idea of two soldiers of fortune righting wrongs in the American Southwest just before the Americans entered World War I. So the car of choice had to be a sports car. The most famous sports car of the era, absolutely bar none, was the Stutz Bearcat. So the pilot film was called Powder Keg, and it was filmed in late 1970 or the spring of 71, and it was a hit. So CBS ordered a series. So the production company, which was Filmways and Rod Taylor's own company, Rodlore, ordered two cars for the series. The best estimate is Barris started building them around March of 1971. The first car was completed in late June, because I know they were filming by the beginning of July. They were wrapping up an episode in Arizona on July 4th.
Tucson? Is that where they shot?
Yes,
that?
down in Old Tucson. They filmed the first couple of episodes there, then they switched to New Mexico. But most of the famous episodes were filmed at Old Tucson. And the Old Tucson studios is where they filmed a lot of movies, McClintock and a lot of the Gunfight at OK Corral, the High Chaparral TV show. And when I visited there in 1990, they had a theme park as part of the tour, and in the theme park they had a drive-it-yourself Stutz Bearcat ride. And so I'd like to think that somebody at Old Tucson remembered Bearcats.
Yeah.
Barris had to build two cars out of scratch in short order. He designed them using the real Stutz Bearcat they used in the pilot film. And he designed a custom steel square tube chassis. The bodywork is all metal. The only wood of the car is the floorboards,
Wheels,
and of course the wheels. They say the tires were made by Firestone. Stuart Warner donated the gauges. The Moon Company built the gas tanks and provided the accelerator pedal. But most of the work was done by Barris. He was able to have new brass radiators built, and I understand they are in fact interchangeable with the correct Stutz unit. The wheels are the correct size. They're solid hickory, high pressure tires, tube tires. The bodywork was done by a young Italian immigrant by the name of Andre Di Stefanis, and he had cut his teeth at one of the custom car shops in Italy. I believe it was Torino, and then he spent some time in South America, And then his first job in America was working for Barris, and his first job at Barris was building the bodywork for these.
Nice.
The car used in the pilot film was a genuine 1914 Stutz Bearcat. It was owned by Pacific Auto Rental, which was the place to go to if you were making a movie throughout the 30s through the 80s. And they rented it. The car was originally red and black. It had been painted the year before white for the James Earl Jones movie, The Great White Hope.
Yep.
And they left it in that color scheme for Bearcats, probably because, you know, the Lone Ranger had a white horse, so the good guys should have a white car. Mine has a 223 cubic inch engine, 4-speed transmission, Mustang rear end, 8-inch Ford rear end, custom front end. I've been told the front axle might be out of a early 50s Chevy pickup. He made it correctly right-hand drive.
Yep.
He correctly has the accelerator pedal between the clutch and brake, just like a real Stutz. And if you look closely at the front end, there is a dummy friction shock absorber.
Yep.
And those are details that typically you wouldn't see on TV, but Barris thought enough of it to sweat the details to make it as accurate as possible.
Yeah. And car number 2 was an automatic, though.
Correct. Car number 2 was an automatic. It had a remote shifter on the side. I believe it still has the same 223 engine, but for whatever reason, it showed up during only the second half of the episodes being filmed.
Yeah.
But if you look at each episode carefully, which thankfully we can do nowadays with DVDs, you can see which car is in what shot because of the placement of the horn bulb. Occasionally you can see the stick shift in the middle, but also there are very slight differences in the paint scheme.
Oh yeah, the pinstriping, right?
The pinstriping is in slightly different locations, so you can see which car is which.
Colors are reversed too.
And the colors of the pinstripes are reversed. On my car, the pinstripe is thick black, thin red on either side. On the second car, it is thick red with black on either side.
But car 3 was just for promotions.
Correct.
And that was yellow, right?
Yes, bright yellow. If you know Barris' history, he was caught flat-footed when Batman became a hit. He needed a car for car shows. So he quickly made a couple of car show cars that were never seen on screen. Well, he thought the same thing might happen with Bearcats, so he made a third car. It has a different engine. It too has an automatic. And from looking at pictures of its construction, it looks like it's on a bigger frame and the tires are much bigger. The wheels look like something you would find on a 3/4 ton truck of the period, or perhaps a fire engine. So I've had personal interactions with all 3 cars over the years. I saw the number 2 car when it went up for sale in 2003 at Barrett-Jackson. It did not sell. Their website says it did, but it actually went back to the owner.
Was that the one that was actually yellow in the number 3 car paint job?
Correct. The number 2 car ended up at a car museum in Chicago, and at some point it was painted to match the number 3 car.
And it had the machine guns on it.
Yes, it had the machine guns on it. It was bright yellow. It had the red pinstripes, and on the splash guard it said Bearcats built by George Barris.
Yeah.
So currently my car is the only one in the correct colors as you saw it on TV. And the other odd thing is, if you look at the car on TV, it looks white.
Okay.
But as we sit here today, it's actually a very cream pale yellow. And I was shocked when it rolled off the transporter after I bought it.
As a teenager, John saw the show Bearcats in 1971 and fell in love with the car. Years later, he would start the quest of looking for a Bearcat of his own and possibly the actual car from the show.
Well, Bearcats premiered in the fall of 1971. And coincidentally, in 1971, I was a 16-year-old, and 16-year-old kids like cars. And I remember hearing about the show was going to be on TV, and I was at high school that day, and I thought, oh, do I want to watch it or not? And I guess I finished my homework early, so I watched it. Fell in love with the car. I had heard the name Stutz Bearcat, but I hadn't really seen them up close. And through a TV Guide article, I knew that it was a replica that I was looking at, but I became enamored with Stutz. And that Christmas, for a present, I asked my parents for a lovely big book, and there was a red Stutz Bearcat on the cover. Yeah. It's called The American Automobile by Ralph Stein. Mm-hmm. And I devoured that book day and night, and slowly I decided I had to have a Stutz Bearcat. And then I was shocked to find out that a real Stutz Bearcat cost the huge figure of $40,000.
In 71 first.
Yeah, so I thought, my goodness, I'll never be able to afford a $40,000 car. So I wondered, gee, what happens, maybe I could buy one of the Barris cars. The show was canceled after 13 episodes, and I thought, well, gee, maybe the car's out there. And the show's cancellation was funny. In one way, it kind of made the car not that important, yeah. But fortuitously, it made it affordable. If Bearcats had been a big a hit as Bonanza, this would be a $4 million car like the TV Batmobile, right. And I never would have had it. Fast forward to 1998, I get a free trip to the Middle East, and on the way back, I buy a Hemmings Motor News. And there was an ad in there for a guy from Connecticut saying, Stutz Bearcat replica for sale. And I thought, gee, this may be a way to do it. To make a very long story short, in the days before the internet, you actually had to telephone and write for information. It turned out not to be a Barris car. Yeah. It was a fiberglass replica somebody else made. But that got me in the hunt.
Yeah, I remember the series too. I think I was about 8, and you're right, that car just stuck in my mind, and that's when I saw this one out there, that kind of got me on the hunt, just like you did too.
And that's what's nice about the car, is I've been good about, or trying to be good about, showing it off. And with the advent of the internet, that certainly helped. That's how you saw it. I've been lucky enough to have it placed in various media forms. It's in a book about hot rods, a well-known book about hot rods. It was in the Wall Street Journal. Yep. It's been in a couple of other books. So I like to get the car out there, and occasionally I'd get a phone call from a fan asking about the car. When I was out driving, people would ask me about it, and I developed a series of answers. If it was a real casual question, say from a mom with her kids, yeah. The first question would be, is it Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? And they would ask what it is. I would say, well, it's a 1914 Stutz Bearcat. And that would satisfy them. Yeah. If it was a car guy, then you mentioned Barris. Yeah. And if it was a real TV car guy, then you go into the long, detailed answer.
When you got the car, it had been around for a while and needed a little work to be done, right? So you...
That's right. When it was delivered to me from the previous owner in Philadelphia, and I was living at the time in Abilene, Texas. And again, this is 1999, the spring of 1999, long before the internet. So I had my dream car, huge car carrier came, dropped this thing off, had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with it.
Was it running?
Oh, it was running, yeah, okay. It was fine. The wheels were absolutely shot. They were cracked. One of them was wired together. The tires were probably the original from the 1970s.
Wow.
That didn't prevent me from driving the car every day after I got home from work. And there was a long straight road from my neighborhood to the air base, and I would go that, and I'd be traveling 50, 60 miles an hour.
Oh boy.
Just to see if it would do it.
That's
Absolutely
exciting.
out of my mind. I shouldn't have done that considering
Yeah.
the condition of the wheels. I had just restored a Jeep, 1977 CJ5 Jeep, to stock condition, and I had found a nice guy in town, a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, who did that for fun. I asked around and found the best body shop in town, Art Custom Body,
Yeah.
owned by a young Latino man who everybody said was the absolute best in town. He agreed to do the body work. So I drove the car down there. We took off the radiator, pushed the rest of it in his garage, and he started working on it. He would have the car for about a year. Took it back to bare metal, took the body, what there is of it, off the frame. I took the wheels off. After looking around, I was able to find a wheelwright up in Oklahoma who could do the wheels, and the wheels would be the hardest part of the restoration.
How did you find that guy at that time? That seems to be
Can't
be many of them around.
No, I asked around and I asked around. I knew a guy in town who was a retired county prosecutor who had a huge car collection, and I may have found him through him.
Yeah.
So one day I loaded up all the wheels in the back of a pickup and drove, 4 or 5 hours up to Oklahoma,
Yeah.
dropped them off. It took him well over a year, and at the same time I had tires on order, but they were back ordered.
Yeah.
As you might guess, 34 by 4.5 tires aren't easily available. You can't go into Walmart and order them. Finally, they were done, and went up to pick up the wheels. We go up to his house, nice house overlooking a lake in central Oklahoma, and the wheels are just out on a lawn like this, and they're absolutely sparkling. My wife says, quick, pay him before he changes his mind.
Was that the last part that you needed? Was the rest of the car done waiting
By
for the
then,
wheels?
the rest of the car was done. I have photos of the car in my 2-car garage up on jack stands. Everything in place except the wheels. We got the body pieces back from the body shop, and Charlie and I reattached the body in my garage.
That's the fun part.
Mechanically, it didn't need a lot of work. I still haven't touched the transmission. Haven't done much to the engine other than basic maintenance.
Yeah.
The other parts of the restoration was new dashboard, new instruments. I built a new gas tank because the original moon unit didn't look right. It's unpainted spun aluminum. It looks like something you'd see on a dragster of the 60s.
Yeah.
And it had a single fuel cap.
Right.
The original Stutzes had 2 brass units. The gentleman who helped me find the car was a Stutz restorer. I ordered from him 2 brass fuel caps, and he said they came from the original casting.
How long did the restoration take from beginning to end?
16 months probably. And one of the first times I showed it was a local rod run in town.
Yeah.
There was a car show at the local zoo, and then another early show was the Veterans Day Parade. So I dressed up in a outfit that Rod Taylor would have worn. My wife is a former nurse in the British Army, so she wore her uniform, which looked exactly like a World War I English nurse uniform. and we buy Liberty bonds on the hood.
Yeah.
I put a 48 Star American flag on the back,
Cool.
and that was our World War I tribute.
Nice.
John has had the opportunity to meet George Barris a couple times before Mr. Barris passed in 2015. Once John visited George at Barris Custom Industries in Hollywood, California. George also invited John and the Bearcat to attend a car show in Canada.
All right. Yeah, so the 1914 Stutz Bearcat, built by George Barris in 1971, right?
Mm-hmm.
You met George, right, at some point and talked to him about it?
That's right. Before I bought the car, I received photos by mail, again being before the internet days, sent them to Barris's office in Hollywood. He did confirm it was his car, so I could buy it with confidence, because as I mentioned, other people have made Bearcat replicas. When I started restoring it, I knew it was important to get his authentication, which basically means it's his seal of approval, it is his car, no questions asked. When it was finished, I sent him photos. After I retired from the service, I went out to Los Angeles for a week to do some flying, and I made arrangements to go visit Barris at his office. And it was a real thrill. You go to North Hollywood, and you've seen the pictures in Hot Rod magazine and books, and you walk in there, and there are the cars, and he comes out, introduces himself, takes you into his office, filled with models, photos of him with everybody in Hollywood, from Clint Eastwood to John Lennon to Sonny and Cher, anybody who's anybody. So we talk about the Bearcat, and he sees the photo prints that I brought for him. And then at the end of the conversation, he says, "Do you want to see it?" I said, "See what?" He said, "Oh, the Batmobile." Of course, what kid my age doesn't want to see the Batmobile? So he takes me into his private garage, and there sitting is the #1 all-metal Batmobile. He opens the door, I sit in it, pick up the bat phone, and his secretary's sitting there, and she says, "That's the first thing anybody does is they pick up the bat phone." So she took some photos of George and I with that, and of the 3 Barris Bearcats, mine is the only one that is properly authenticated. The gentleman that owned the #2 car, he was in the Stutz Club with me for a while, and I kept telling him, you need to get Barris to okay it, and he never did. Same thing with the #3 car. So I like to think this has very good provenance and undisputed history.
So you also met him up in Canada for a show that was up there, huh?
In 2010, I was invited to a car show. There's an annual car show at Abbotsford, and Barris was a featured guest every year. The organizer, the promoter, knew Barris, so he'd fly him up from Hollywood. And that year he was bringing a later Batmobile replica. It looked like the 66, but it had been made many years later.
8 or 9 of those, didn't he?
Yeah, and this was a later car. So he said, please bring up the Bearcat. He said, I'll put you up in a hotel and give you free space. And so I said, sure. So it was fun to do. Barris had not seen the car in person since he sold it to the TV company. Got some photos of him with it. He later autographed them and was very pleased the car was in a good home. A lot of Canadians saw it. The Canadian press went crazy over it. It ended up in a Vancouver newspaper, ended up in a magazine, so it was well received.
Great.
Harry Stutz was an automobile manufacturer at the turn of the century. In 1911, He built a prototype race car in just 5 weeks and entered it into the inaugural Indianapolis 500. Out of the 40 cars that qualified for the race, the Bearcats' remarkable 11th place finish and against more established competitors, without any mechanical failures, earned the car and company the motto, "The car that made good in a day." 100 years later in May 2011, they gathered for a celebration at the Brickyard. John and the Barris Bearcat were there.
2011 and 2012 was the 100th anniversary of Stutz, right?
The prototype Bearcat ran in the very first Indy 500.
Yep.
It came in 11th place. It would have come in much faster, but it had tire issues. Harry Stutz used that as his advertising slogan, saying, "The car that made good in a day." The Stutz factory was in downtown Indianapolis, and the whole Stutz company that ran from 1911 to 1934-ish was basically founded on the Bearcat and its racing provenance. So in 2011,
Yep.
the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was having the 100th anniversary of the 500. The Stutz Club was having its annual meet, and it coincided there. They were invited to have the meet at the Speedway. So I said, there's no way I can miss this.
Yeah.
So I loaded up the Bearcat, put it in the trailer, and went 2,000 miles east. When I turned off of the main drag there and took it to the back of the Speedway, it was one of the most thrilling parts of my life. A, that I made the trip, and B, to share this car at the place that has so much history.
Yeah.
So the Stutz meet was there. We kept the car in a tent at night with the other Stutz cars, so it was surrounded by
How many Stutz cars were there?
probably about 30.
Wow.
And there were about a half dozen original 1912 through 1916 Bearcats, a lot of the later cars, the beautiful sedans, the cars that raced at Le Mans, the Blackhawks. So the Stutz Club has always been very, very good to me about this car. When I started looking for the car, the Stutz Club was the first place I went to, and their then president helped me get in contact with the gentleman that eventually led me to this car. So the Stutz Club owners were very welcoming. There wasn't any snobbery. A couple of the Bearcat owners came up to me and said, "Gee, I wish my car were as dependable as yours." You know, there's something to be said for parts you can buy at Napa. But yeah, it was great to have the car in Indy. I took it out, and they had us lap the Speedway, and we have some photos of that. I also gave rides to anybody who wanted rides. So there were some GIs who were doing some recruiting work. I gave them some rides. I gave some rides to some racetrack volunteers. And one morning, they were having a car show. And I didn't enter it in the car show because it's not a real Stutz, but I was out driving, and it was the first weekend of time trials. And Gasoline Alley was open, and there were race teams in there. And for some reason, they had neglected to put a guard at the entrance of Gasoline Alley. So, under the guise of, if you look like you know what you're doing, nobody will stop you. I drove into Gasoline Alley, drove past all the racing transporters, saw some drivers, they all waved, and snuck out before the guards caught me. And then a few minutes later, I told this to a friend of mine that had a real Stutz. He said, "Let's try it." And we tried it again. Only by then a guard was there and wouldn't let us do it. So,
After 26 years of owning and caring for the Bearcat and its legacy, John has decided to pass the car along to another Bearcats fan who has had a similar connection to the car and the show. Dave is from Cincinnati. He also remembers watching the show when it came out in 1971. He remembers the adventures that Hank and Johnny had in episodes that included tanks, old airplanes, and lots of explosions. He also recalls building the model of the Bearcat car as a kid. But the thing he remembered most about the show was definitely the Bearcat. That bright white, brass-era car that stood out in the hot sun against the backdrop of the desert Southwest. That was a memory that would stay buried in his head for years. Until one day, while searching for cars on the internet, he stumbled across one of the Barris Bearcats that was for sale in England. It was yellow and had machine guns mounted to it. He hadn't thought of that show or the car for years. He made contact with the owner of the car over in England, where it was tucked away in a hangar with a bunch of other cars. Negotiations went on back and forth for months. As he researched the history of the show and the Barris cars, the white, number 1 car kept popping up. There were many photos and articles about it. That was the car he remembered from the show. Eventually he was able to track down John, the owner of the white Bearcat. They had a long conversation about the show, his car, and the Barris Bearcats. To Dave's surprise, John was willing to part with the car after owning it for 26 years. So they came to an agreement. He began planning the long trip from Cincinnati to Spokane, and he sold his 1935 Auburn Boattail Speedster to make room for the Bearcat. Fortunately for Dave, he had a few friends that lived along the way. So he picked them up and they went to Washington to meet John and pick up the car. After a day of chatting with John and getting the full rundown on the car and all things Bearcats, they packed up the car and started heading east on their long journey back home. On their way, they would pass by some of America's great national parks. They stopped at the Black Hills and had a few adventures. They saw the amazing Devil's Tower National Monument. While checking out Mount Rushmore, they even bumped into Mr. Lincoln. They saw many amazing things as they made their way back east and dropped off the friends at their homes along the way. 10 states and 4,000 miles later, Dave was home with the Bearcat. And so ends the journey of finding one of the Barris Bearcats. Now the fun with the Bearcat begins. Dave has already had the car out to multiple shows and it seems everyone loves the Bearcat. He says he will display the car at shows and events as much as possible in order to keep the memory of the Barris Bearcat cars alive, just as John has done for the last quarter century. So in conclusion, it looks like we have found all 3 of the Barris Bearcats. At the time this video was made, in the summer of 2025. We know that the number 3 car was purchased at auction and is currently located in Florida. The number 2 car is still tucked away over in jolly old England. And of course the number 1 car is with Dave in Cincinnati, Ohio, where it is being displayed at shows and other events. We hope you have enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about one of George Barris's little-known TV car creations, and the short-lived but memorable TV show, Bearcats. Thank you for watching.